Well, I know that the future of prog metal is in great hands with bands such as this. Let's dive into this. Phases by Next to None. So Next to None is an American prog metal band being helmed by some really young kids. Like, these guys are either just touching or just before their 20s. Like, these guys are still teenagers in some respects, but just also entering their 20s. Very, very young kids. And yet this is still their second album. This is their sophomore release. I really dug and I really enjoyed their first album of A Light in the Dark. I felt I could see the potential that they had, and I really was looking forward to all their next releases, and this guy did not disappoint. The kids took what they learned from their first album and really applied it to their sophomore album. With a sophomore album, you always run the risk of not quite reaching that same pinnacle of music, and a lot of bands struggle with it. Not these guys. These guys took the inertia that they had built with their first album and definitely applied it here. These guys take a lot of influences from a lot of prog metal bands like Haken, like Tesseract, as well as a lot of like heavy metal, heavy rock outfits like Alexis on Fire, but I think their biggest influence is probably Avenged Sevenfold. Like, that type of fun, aggressive metal is definitely found within these kids. So they've got the angst, they've got the drive, they've got the energy and the passion that only the young kids can really employ. Like, it's really strange to see a lot of the older generations try to capture on that type of energy. But these guys, because they're in it, they really place it down. Now, I do know that it's a little, I don't know, when I see that kind of angst coming from the demographic of the kids that are on there, it's one of those, well, really, what do you have to be that angry about when you're coming from, at the very least, a middle class income, being raised within that type of an environment? But I'm going to leave that aside, and I'm going to evaluate the music and the messages that they have. So, I mean, overall, you've got that aggression, you've got that angst, you've got that passion and that drive. And you're blending it with some top-notch talent. Like, I can't get over how talented these kids sound. These guys are sounding like they're decades into their career, just with how much polish and how much experience you can see on this album. And the album opens up beautifully with 13, which is just kind of like the sounds that are prepping us for the inevitable ride that we're in for, which leads us straight into Answer Me. And Answer Me has that oomph that I was really hoping for with Next to None. You know, you've got the driving force that Max Portnoy is employing on the drums, providing the heartbeat. The mastery that this kid holds on the drums is, I hate to use the pun, but it's next to none. Like, this guy is surpassing so many modern drummers at such a young age. The complexities that he's being able to hold in his head with the different time signatures is just astounding. And with that, we've got that heavy riff of the guitars that are providing the bottom and providing that texture of the song. The part that I love is the blending of the keyboards. Gotta love me some keyboards. Then it leads us into the third track of The Apple. And The Apple is one of the singles that they have. They have a full-on music video for this song. And it is quite the treat. And this provides also the quirkiness that the band has. When we come into one of the bridges of this song, they're saying, you know, really bad with metaphors, but they also say that the apple never falls far from the pear. And it's interesting because pear in French is father, and a lot of where this band got its notoriety is from the father of the drummer, being a very, very famous drummer, Mike Portnoy. And along with that, the actual metaphor being the apple never falls far from the tree, being, you know, it's very close to that. I thought that was a very interesting play with words. So it also shows the intellect and the fun that these kids have within their lyrics as well. Like, not only is the musicianship very brilliant, but also the lyrics are very brilliant. And when we come into the breakdown of The Apple, and it's just that chugging guitars and that I can't help but just groove along as well. It's such a fun atmosphere. Now, I will say that the angst and the anger that is felt on here does get a little bit on my nerves, and this is found with Beg, and this is just a personal preference of mine. Beg starts off with that really intensive sound on the guitars, and then it comes into that chorus where it's just saying, I'm so effing happy, I'm so effing happy. And it kind of beats me over the head a little too heavily, and I think that's more of the influence that we had from bands such as Avenged Sevenfold and, you know, Alexisonfire and all those other ones, those modern kind of metal outfits. Which is why I love tracks such as Alone, where the first half of this is dedicated to a softer build and a softer build up. So when we come into that heavy hitting parts within the second half, it's more earned, and it shows to me that the band now understands when to utilize the intensiveness and when to use the somber moments. And that is where a lot of bands kind of falter, because a lot of bands don't know when to use these guys. And Alone provides that very, very well.
All I fear is that no one is here.
Now we come into one of my favorite tracks, the 6th song of Kek. I think that's how you pronounce it, Kek. 10.5 minutes, beautiful, beautiful prog metal track. It opens up very, very heavily with a beautiful, meaty guitar hook, very similar to something like a Dream Theater or a Haken. And about a minute and a half in, we have that beautiful synth coming in and answering the call that the guitar was laying out. If we're talking about build-ups, the big climax, this is where I knew these guys have a very, very bright future. The song goes through a lot of ebb and flow, a lot of craziness, and when we come into the breakdown and it becomes very mellow and very somber, we have the angst screaming and yelling out into the night of like, no, we're not going to take this. Oh, again, it's earned. It's not just we're here. No, we're here for a purpose, and I love that payoff, and it gets really emotional, and I'm along for that journey. Next couple of songs, Clarity and Pause. I'm not going to talk too much about these guys because I feel like it's kind of retreading the same territory, but I'm never bored, and that's a very interesting thing. Like, this album is, in my mind, it's on the long side. Like, it's an hour and 20 minutes, and I find when you're getting into an 80-minute collection, it does get a little bit tiresome. It does become a little bit taxing as a listener, but I'm never bored, and that, I think, is the key. You can make an album as long as you want, as long as you're not boring your listener, and I'm never bored. But I do find with Clarity and Pause, I just don't, there's not a whole lot that I can grab onto that I can really talk about. Now, that can't be said about Mr. Mime. Damn, I love this song. I love how brutal it is without being completely retreading the same steps that we've gotten to this point. And this is blended perfectly within the 10th track of Isolation, which is just a purely instrumental piece, and I think we needed this. After such a crazy interlude that we had of Clarity, Pause, and Mr. Mime, Isolation is definitely needed for just a little bit of a breather, because we're coming into the final stretch of this album, and Denial and The Wanderer need a little bit of breather before we finally climb that last mountain. And Denial, I feel, is very similar to, say, the Clarity, Pause, where I'm just like, okay, it's another track. Again, I'm not bored, but I also feel like there's not a whole lot I can grab onto. Like, it is catchy, it's always in my face, it's always driving, I'm enjoying the ride, but there's also not a whole lot that I can sink my teeth into. Now, that can't be said for the final track of The Wanderer, the band's first real epic. Damn, this track is tasty. I've listened to this track a number of times, and each time I'm finding something new to really devour. I love the concept of this song, and I think the band is really, like, they've got a firm grasp on how to use an epic like this. The Wanderer being not only a metaphor and a concept to springboard the entire song, but the Wanderer also being the wanderer through the music. Like, again, the intellect that these kids have and the forethought for the songwriting ability, I hate to use it again, but it is next to none. I love how the band takes their time to really set up and structure this song. I love how the midpoint of this song is so chaotic and so crazy. Like, there's the one piece where it breaks down a little bit, and then when it comes back, it's almost dubstep. And I really wish more bands had utilized this technique, because it's so Like, there's so much possibility in here, and I'm saddened that more bands aren't using this type of a technique. When we finally get over that, the musicianship is just stellar. The interplay between the keyboards and guitars and the singer. The singer I haven't called out yet, but I really need to call out the main singer of Thomas Cook, or Koos. Koos? Anyway, he provides the main keyboards and vocals on this, and the talent this kid has is just phenomenal. His vocals, with being the growls, being the screams, but also being the cleans. That clean vocals that he has is just so heart-wrenching and so passionate. When we come into the final plateau of this song, it really reminds me of a Between the Buried and Me piece, and I feel like they definitely emulate that. And Thomas might just be the next Thomas from Between the Buried and Me, because he's got that same range and the same passion behind it. So overall, love this album. This is a great addition to their discography. They took what they learned from the first album, applied it beautifully to this one, and I'm so glad for that. These guys know what they're doing. I can't wait to see what they've got for the rest of their career. I gotta say, you gotta find this album in physical format. This deserves to be in your collection. It deserves its rightful place within some of the masters that we have today. So that's about it. What did you guys think of Next to None's latest album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know of your own thoughts by commenting down below. This one also provided a beautiful reminder because they pre-released this album a couple weeks ago, and I listened to it a lot while I was in Anaheim, so listening to it now, it brought back a lot of those fond memories, so A+, loved it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to be doing a listening party. I'm reminding everybody at the end of all my videos, doing a listening party at the beginning of August 1st, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to be listening to my favorite album, live streaming it, and I hope you guys can join me for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.